Welcome to Freedom from Fire. As always, we'll give you a glimpse into the Philadelphia Fire Department and show you how you can keep yourself and your family safe. In today's episode, we'll go behind the scenes at the Fireman's Hall Museum with curator Brian Anderson. Stay here for Freedom from Fire. Hello, and welcome back to Freedom from Fire. I'm your host, firefighter Camila Bayete. I'm currently stationed in our department's Fire Prevention and Code Division, where community risk reduction efforts are a primary goal. Here at Freedom from Fire, we aim to improve your quality of living by giving you fire and life safety information. We also introduce you to our local safety partners. On this episode, we will talk to firefighter Brian Anderson. Brian has been with the Philadelphia Fire Department for 22 years and is museum curator at the Fireman's Hall Museum here in Philadelphia. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Brian, first tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at the Fireman's Hall Museum.
Well, I am a second generation firefighter. I followed after the footsteps of my father, who was a lieutenant and served for 26 years. And I'm now on the department since 2000, and this is my 22nd year. And now being the curator here at Fireman's Hall Museum, I'm responsible for the overall operations and the maintenance of the building and the day-to-day activities of the museum itself.
All right, so Brian, how much time did you spend in the field before coming over to the Fireman's Hall Museum?
I was in the field for about 15 years. I got injured in 2015 where I tore my meniscus in my right knee.
Oh, okay. So, that brought me to my next question. My question was, what led you from the field into where you are now as museum curator?
So it was right after the time that firefighter Joyce Craig had passed, and we started revisiting basement training fires. And we were trained at the academy when I was advancing the hose line and tore my meniscus in the stairwell. I fell down the steps and tore my meniscus. And had surgery, was out a year, and came back down light duty at headquarters. And at that time, the current curator here, Alberto Gonzalez, was retiring after 4 years with 30 years of total service. So they asked me if I wanted to come over to be trained.
Wow. So that leads me to my next question. You mentioned firefighter Gonzalez. When you came here to the museum, you made some history of your own when you became the curator, and you followed a firefighter Gonzalez, who also made some history here at the museum as curator. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, the history there with you, and then also firefighter Gonzalez.
So when I came over in 2016, Alberto Gonzalez was the curator for the last 4 years, and he was the first Hispanic, first Latino firefighter. Tito was at ladder 22 in the D platoon and got injured. Had been out here several times throughout the years, and they thought he would be a good fit to be the curator here. So he was the first Latino in the department. And then when he was retiring, he didn't have a replacement. So after the injury, they asked me if I wanted to be trained, and I became the first African-American curator in the history of the museum since 1967.
Wow, that's great history, to learn about firefighter Gonzalez as well as yourself. Now, what does that history mean to you? What does all that mean to you personally?
I mean, it's very humbling when you come into the department and you see that history is being made every day, and now I'm a part of the history. I try not to let that dwell too much into my daily duties and job. but it does give me a good sense of pride. But because of having that stress and responsibility of being the first African American, that puts a lot of stress and pressure on me to walk upright, to do a job, to make sure that I'm vigilant in what I do and I'm correct in the way I display the history for the department and the members of this department.
Well, I can definitely attest to my visits here at the museum, just how knowledgeable you are about the history, and how well you do with the visitors here, and just in educating them about our history. So I can attest to that. So staying on the subject of history, tell us about the history of the Fireman's Hall Museum, its beginning and how it's evolved over the years.
So the building was built in 1899, and this was Engine 8's firehouse from 1899 until 1952. They relocated them on 314 Ray Street. There were a couple entities that occupied the building. Fire Reserve was here for a little bit, and a couple entities, and then in 1967 they decided to open it up as a museum. In 1977 there was an add-on to the museum, which is kind of the main entrance where you come into the museum, as well as when you go up on the second floor where the memorial wall is with the stained glass window. So that was all done for the bicentennial, but opened up a year later in 1977. So the museum's been around, was an actual operating firehouse for the department, and the main focus of the museum is to teach fire prevention to the general public, as well as tell the history of firefighting in Philadelphia.
And so you mentioned the memorial wall. Tell us a little bit about the memorial wall and what that represents.
Right. So the memorial wall is where the stained glass window is, and it's every name. We have some names of the volunteers, but every name from the paid department from 1871 until current. Currently, there are 302 members that have given their life in the line of duty, with Joyce Craig, as I mentioned earlier, being the first female to ever die in the department. And just gives, homage back to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and service in the citizens of Philadelphia. And we try our best to keep their memory alive here in the museum as they dedicated their life and service to the city.
That's great. So just as far as maintaining that history, making sure that people are aware of the history of the department. Now, the museum operates under the fire prevention division, within the fire prevention division. What can you explain why that is, and kind of dig deeper into, you mentioned it a little bit before, but dig deeper into a little bit more about the fire prevention aspect of the museum.
So in 1952, the city charter in Philadelphia changed, and Philadelphia was one of the leading departments to lead off in fire prevention. So they thought what better thing would be but to have the museum to serve as a lead point to educate the public in fire prevention. And that was the main focus. As I said, Philadelphia was the lead in fire prevention. So we have many events here. We would have a child's program that would educate young children and educate them about fire prevention and the importance of having a smoke detector, stop, drop, and rolling to put out fire, and having an escape plan. And they thought the message behind embedding that in a child was vital in getting that out to the general public, because the kids would relive this education they were taught here with their parents, and they would be forced to have a conversation, and it would pass through the family and through the generations and through the neighborhoods and the school groups and different organizations that we have visit the museum.
That's excellent too, because I know myself from going out to do fire safety presentations. We teach the children. The parents also need to know as well. And I always get great feedback from the staff that are, the staff present at the school for the presentations, like, that they learned a lot too. So that's great what you guys are doing here, just in terms of educating the whole family at the same time. So tell me, what does a typical day look like for you here at the museum?
Coming in and first making sure that everything is in good working order, that there are no defects to the building. We've had problems with the building being that it's over 100 years old, and checking for, we have a gift shop as one of the ways that we get revenue here into the museum. So we have an online store, so I would check the online to make sure if there were any orders that were ordered online. Just the daily cleaning of the restrooms and the museum in itself, making sure the exhibits are clean and in good working order, and being ready for meeting the general public of the day.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Now, what can you tell us about any particular exhibits? Like, what's your newest exhibit here at the museum?
Well, our newest exhibit we unveiled in 2019. It's the Bates hand engine. So this was a hand engine that was used during the collapse of the volunteer era and was somehow pushed into the Delaware River for an unknown amount of years when it was discovered and towed out. Was displayed, and a little restoration was done to it in a small private museum, and that museum folded, and the museum then acquired it and stored it for 10 years. And then we did some fundraising exercises down here to acquire about $30,000 to have that handed and restored. And in 2019, we unveiled it, and that sits here in our lobby area.
Oh, that's great. So tell us about, not far from the lobby area is a 9/11 display. And I recently learned that Fireman's Hall Museum was the first fire museum in United States to have a 9/11 display. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Probably about 6 to 7 months after 9/11, Fireman's Hall Museum was the first museum in the nation to display any type of memorial for the FDNY members that died in the line of duty. That came about with one of our board members, Maggie Struckert, who reached out with a colleague she had in New York, and they were able to get in touch with the members of FDNY and exchange pictures. And we even have some debris, an actual ground zero debris that's encased in a sealed case from 9/11.
Wow. Wow. So that's definitely something to encourage people to get down here and see, as well as the other exhibits that you have here. Now, besides the memorial wall and the 9/11 exhibit, what other kinds of things will visitors see when they come to the museum?
So we have everything that goes from leather buckets to parade hats that were around in the volunteer era, leading up to old tools and equipment that the paid department used. One of the apparatus that is displayed out on the apparatus floor is Engine 11's actual steamer engine, the Metropolitan, that was built probably in 1901. That's still on the apparatus floor today. So we have everything from an axe to a 1926 American LaFrance fire engine that sits on our apparatus floor. So a lot of artifacts, a lot of things that date back and tell the heritage and the story of firefighting here in Philadelphia.
Well, that's a great way to dive into the history. All right. So with that said, we are going to take a short break. All right. But when we get back, we'll keep this awesome conversation going. So please stay tuned.
As birthplace to the first volunteer fire companies, Philadelphia is home to one of the nation's premier fire museums. Fireman's Hall Museum displays the city's fire history in addition to promoting fire safety. You can visit Fireman's Hall Museum in Old City at 147 North 2nd Street. Visit firemanshallmuseum.org to learn more, or watch the museum's show, Curator's Corner, on LaSalle TV.
Welcome back to Freedom from Fire. I'm your host, firefighter Camila Bayete. We are talking to firefighter Brian Anderson, curator of the Fireman's Hall Museum. All right. So, Brian, COVID changed how we operate in many facets of the department in the world. How has COVID impacted the museum? How has it impacted how you guys operate? Does it impact how you operate?
Oh, definitely. Typically, on a good year, we get somewhere around 40,000 visitors a year. And one of the reasons it's for that is the museum is free. So with us having the shutdown and then opening back up, we didn't have the clientele that we normally would have. So that caused us to deeper and to look and to use our social media platforms. One of the things that we have on our social media platform was a TV show that we do, which is called the Curator's Corner. And that idea actually came from our captain and fire prevention, Jose Perez, who asked me if we wanted to do a TV show that told about the history of some of the things that are not on display here in the museum. So it's a lot of content here. So we started using our social media platforms more with that show, as well as setting up virtual tours for people that could not physically come here in the city to see the museum. Now you can just go on our website and take a virtual tour of the museum, which is just as good as not being here yourself.
That's a great way to get the message out to not only the city, but the world. Anyone can log on from around the world and watch the show, as well as do those virtual tours. So that's great. It's a great idea to get that out there. So you also, in terms of the show, how are you enjoying it? Like, how is that? And is it something that you considered in terms of, like, did you ever feel you would be hosting a show, think you'd be hosting a show? And are you enjoying it?
No, that was, I never thought I would be doing anything like that, but it brings me full circle in the mission here and greeting the guests. Sometimes we get visitors from around the world. So this may be their first interaction with a firefighter. And that causes me to be on my game with presentations and talking to big groups. So I do love that. It's been groundbreaking for me. It's pushed me to another aspect in my career, but I do enjoy it. The show in itself is we're growing as the show grows. So it's not just talking about stuff here at the museum, but in the future, going out to the different stations to display some of the different apparatus and operations that we do on the fire ground, or specialized operation units that we have in the department. Just giving somebody that's not familiar with the Philadelphia Fire Department a little familiarization of what we do and how we operate, because you may have young minds that will aspire to be in a position of a firefighter.
Absolutely. So are there any exhibits coming up? You told me about the one you have currently in the lobby right now, but do you have anything coming up in the next few months, maybe early next year, that you can tell us about?
I think going back to our conversation about COVID, one of the things that when people came in here, seeing the 302 people that have died in the line of duty is very humbling, and especially for myself being here with those last 8 names I put on the wall. I knew those individuals, or I was working when those jobs were going on, and I heard it on the radio. So one of the aspects that we're doing now is trying to have a kiosk where you can go online on our website to monitor the wall, to see the line of duty death walls. And if you can search it by first, last, name, rank, or date of death, and it will go in and give you some pictures and a little more detailed about what exactly happened on that day, or a little more in tune of what they did in their career. And so that's something that we've already launched online on our website, and it's a kiosk that we're trying to do here. So you can see more than just the name on the wall here on the actual wall, but you go to the kiosk and see the pictures of the story of what happened on that day.
Wow, that's fascinating. I definitely look forward to seeing that. Yeah, that's great what you guys are doing in regards to that. Now, you here at the museum, you talked about some events that you have here, different events. Tell us more about the types of events that you have here at the museum. And are there any interesting events coming up like late this year or early next year?
So every year we have an award event, which is honoring the EMS Provider of the Year Award, which usually happens in May, and the Firefighter of the Year Award, which would happen in October of Fire Prevention Month. So what we did is, because of COVID, we give both those awards away in October. We just had that event. So a memo goes out to the field asking any member if they went above and beyond. And this award is something that's given from the museum, from the Philadelphia Fire Department Historical Corporation, in partnership with the Philadelphia Fire Department. It's a pin that they wear, as well as some monetary gifts that they get. There may be a check, overnight stay at the museum. Overnight stay at the hotel, and dinner for two. The Commissioner Teal has quite a few events that happens here. We've done promotions in the museum. We just had a luncheon that honored Deputy Chief Charlie LaFree, who served for 58 years, who may be, we're still under the investigation of finding out in the research if he was the longest tenured member of the department, but that was something to celebrate. That's history in its making in itself. And we have currently some fundraisers that go on at different times of the year to try to bring revenue into the museum and educate the public on what we do here to display the great artifacts that are in this museum.
All right, so it looks like there's always something going on here at the museum.
We try to stay busy.
That's good. That's good. So are there any interesting experiences that you've had here at the Fireman's Hall Museum that you can share with us? Like anything that surprised you when you first became the museum curator?
Quite frequently throughout the years, we'll have a lot of school groups. In the summertime, we'll have the Boy Scouts come in. So the Boy Scouts came in, and with one of the fire chiefs at that time, wanted to put us in connection with helping the Scouts acquire their fire merit badge. So we were prompt on going out to get certain members qualified to be able to give that merit badge when they come here, when they do the program through here, and make our own patch that is affiliated with Fireman's Hall Museum and the Philadelphia Fire Department, but is regulated to the Boy Scouts. So being exposed to that, the experience, and dealing with the youth and seeing how excited they are about learning about fire safety and get their fire badge was very humbling.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. Well, it's always great when to have those partnerships, those community partnerships, and always a good way to educate, to educate. So excellent. Now, in your role as curator, you've been, I guess, going 5 to 7 years. How long have you been the curator at the museum?
6 years now.
6 years. Okay. All right. So what was the biggest challenge for you when you became the curator?
Being a second generation firefighter, hanging around the firehouse watching my father, I thought I knew a lot about the department. And when I got down here, I realized I didn't know anything. So just being encouraged to learn the history and seeing how much I missed, and how the department has grown through the years, through different incidents and the technology, and where we are today. It's really been exciting to be able to tell those stories, display that history, and just properly educate people on what they should know about their history here, as well as fire safety in itself and fire prevention.
All right, so then that leads me to my next question. What's been the biggest blessing in your role as curator?
Wow, my biggest blessing. I guess it's hard to groom somebody for this position. Coming down to staff is way different than working in the field. It's another dynamic. So it has allowed me to see another side of the department. Obviously I'm not doing the things that deputy commissioners or the deputy chiefs and staff are doing, but allowing to see the other side, it kind of brings it full circle to where you are in your career and how that it shows you life after the field, how important these positions are. Because I'm sure a lot of people say, well, what does he do all day down in the museum? It can be very, very busy down here with the amount of people that you have coming down, with the programs going on and the services that we have available to people in the museum while they're attending. It can be very challenging. So I just learned a new way of how to task myself and really step up to a new level in my career.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, like, when I initially, the first time I came down to the museum and, hearing you talk about the history and talking to visitors, it's like, wow, it's so much more than you would think. So much more that goes into it, and just all the events that you do, the show, you have a lot going on down here. And so definitely appreciate the work you're doing here. Now, where can people find out more? When can people get more information about the Fireman's Hall Museum and more information about visiting?
You can go to Fireman's Hall Museum.org. That's our website, and it tells you about the museum, some of the programs that we offer here, and just gives you some of the history. You'll be able to see the memorial wall, as well as some of the blogs that we use on the website. There are historian blogs to talk about the history of the different stations and apparatus over the years. So it's a lot on our website that you can see. You can also connect on our social media platforms, on the Fireman's Hall Museum channel on YouTube as well.
Okay, great. Now, I wanted to ask you about, you're working on a project sometime last year about the commissioners, basically different commissioners of the department. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project and kind of where you are with that?
Yeah, so that was right around the 150th year anniversary of the department, which happened on March 15th of 2021. And we wanted to just tell about the leadership. So there's been 22 leaders, including Commissioner Teal, that have led the Philadelphia Fire Department since 1871. So on our website, we have identified those members with pictures, and it gives you a bio about how long they were in charge and some of the operations that they had during their tenure as the leadership of the Philadelphia Fire Department.
Excellent. Well, and that they can check out on the website as well. Okay, great. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. Wish we had more time. I have so many more questions, but that is the end of our show for today. So, Brian, I want to thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. So to learn more about joining the Philadelphia Fire Department, visit phila.gov/fire. And if you would like to keep up with our show, Freedom from Fire, look for us on Verizon Channel 36, Comcast Channel 56, and LaSalle TV's YouTube page. Also, check out Fireman's Hall Museum, located at 147 North 2nd Street, and meet personally with our museum curator, firefighter Brian Anderson. I would like to once again thank our guest for joining us today. I also would like to thank you for tuning in and watching. So until next time, remember, fire is everyone's fight. Stay safe and remain free from fire.